famous for its tax dodging, fat cat bank accounts, its chocolate, and of course Heidi. Richard. Luckily Richard has got plenty to take his mind off Heidi's pigtails because we're back at the Geneva Motor Show.
This week, Ken Gibson gives up his club class tickets to undertake a marathon drive from England to Geneva in a Mercedes M-Class.
Which isn't exactly slumming it, but it is still one hell of a drive. Once Ken's got his breath back from the journey, we'll be putting him into the latest curvy French offering. Oh, steady on! I'm talking about the Citroen C5, and Mr. Hammond here has been looking at Honda's Accord. All that's coming up in the next 30 minutes, so make sure that you stay with us. Here on Fiat stand, they've given us the first glimpse of this. It's their replacement for the Bravo and the Brava, and it's called the Stilo. Well, I think that's how you pronounce it anyway. It's meant to mean style in lots of different European languages. It's going to be available in a 3 and a 5-door, with the 5-door having kind of MPV type seats that will move around and give a feeling of extra space. Of course, it's going to compete in the medium sector against the likes of the 307 and also the Honda Accord. Oh, from a medium car to a Mini one. Yes, we've seen the Mini Cooper many times before, but Geneva has given us our first glimpse of the car that will actually go on sale in the UK in July. It's going to be known as Mini 1 and it will cost less than £10,000. It'll be powered by a 1.6 litre unit that will push the Mini up to speeds of 115 miles an hour. Speeds that the 60s one could only dream about, as that struggled to reach 80. The good thing about this car is that it is going to be built at Cowley in Oxfordshire, so it's still, although owned by a German company, very much a British car at heart. The styling of the Mini Cooper may capture the spirit of the 60s, but the innovations on it are thoroughly modern. It has everything you would expect from a new millennium car. Twin airbags, ABS, electric windows, central locking, a 6-speaker stereo, and yes, you can even get cup holders on it. All signs that the child of the 60s has thoroughly grown up. Well, from compact little motors to testosterone-packed off-roaders. Sounds like a cue for Mr. Hammond.
So, picture the scene. You're in the desert. You've had a really bad day. You need cheering up. You find this and the keys for it. You'd be cheered up. You could go anywhere. Obviously, it's a Land Rover, but you will be seeing this car in the forthcoming Tomb Raider film. You know, Lara Croft and all that stuff. This is the one they'll be using in the film. And, well, basically, it's a 110 pickup with a V8 with a whole load of stuff stuck on it. Some of which kind of works, some of which is just to look pretty. I think it looks absolutely incredible. There is a rumour that a certain Mr. Ken Gibson is desperate to get his hands on the keys to this thing and might at some point for the programme do just that, but we'll have to see. In the meantime, he's on his mammoth trek in another off-roader, his Mercedes M-Class, from England to Geneva.
Good morning, and what a wonderful morning it is for a drive to the office. The only slight difference is that the office today happens to be in Geneva, a couple of thousand miles away. So why don't you sit back and enjoy the ride. We'll be bringing you little updates of some of the scenery on the way and showing you all the sights. Well, the good news is we're coming up to the end of stage 1. We're about to reach the Channel Tunnel, and after that it's onto French soil for part 2. We're now on the move, but I get a well-earned break from driving because we're going through the tunnel. It also gives me an ideal time to plan the route onwards down to Reims in France, where we're going to be staying just outside as an overnight stop. And once I've planned the route, I shall then pop back into the newly named Hotel M-Class, where I shall have a lunch, a well-earned lunch. Welcome to France and route number 2. Well, we've had 9 hours on the road. Darkness is just about to set in. There's a rather beautiful sunset out there. And I have to concede that I'm looking forward in round about, I think we should make it in another half an hour to 3/4 of an hour to reaching our overnight stop where we'll be having a well-earned meal.
Ken,
What?
we've got to go, mate.
What on earth? It's 5 o'clock. Do not let anyone ever tell me this is a glamorous job again. 5 o'clock in the morning is not glamorous for me. We've got about 6.5 hours now to get to Geneva. I think it's time for the camera to go. I need to get up, wake myself up. This is not a pretty sight. Good morning. This is better. I feel awake now. Well, it's at -3. I've just defrosted the windows. I'm not sure if this augurs rather well for going over the top of the Swiss mountains, but it should be spectacular. So I think it's time to start day 2. This is much better. I've just seen the sign for Geneva and we're just starting to seriously climb, and that means spectacular scenery if I'm not mistaken, and possibly snow, which we'll then be able to see just how good the Mercedes M-Class is when the conditions get a little tough. In a word, well, 2 actually, off. I've been driving for an entire day. This is my lunch break. Good night. Over there is a large lake, which I am taking to be Lake Geneva, and the very fine city of Geneva, which means that I have reached my goal. Well, I will have done in about 10 minutes or so. So I'm going to go there and check out lots more cars, which is after all what it's all about.
Two children of the 60s, we found something that's very close to our hearts.
We love this.
A good old VW Campervan, but it's been reincarnated for the new millennium, and we think it's lovely. Will they make it though?
Well, they are saying that along with the Beetle, when they brought that back, it was a similar thing. They showed it to the world, and if the world said, please make it, they said they would. And it's the same with this. If people make enough noise, they're going to build it.
So you need to go into your local Volkswagen dealer and say, please make it, because you can forget all the Espasses and all the arguments about whether it was the Voyager or the Espace that was the first MPV. This was the original and it was the best. You can see loads of people, you can put your surfboard on the top, you can even sleep in them.
I'll take up surfing just to put a board on the top. I reckon this is a better reinterpretation of the Boogie Bus than the new Beetle is of the old Beetle.
So we're starting the petition right here. Please, Volkswagen, make it for us. We love it. Really nice. I'm going to have this one. No, it's mine. There's only one.
Join us after the break when I'll be romping around in this. It's the... oh, I'll tell you later.
You're such a tease, Richard Hammond. Well, Ken Gibson will be finding out if the Citroen C5 can massage away those tedious motorway miles, so make sure you join us.
The Mondeo may be What Car Magazine's Car of the Year, but in the same segment, Citroen are set to launch the C5 in April, and they hope it's going to continue the tradition of innovation that began with cars like the DS and the SM. But can it really compete against competition like the Mondeo, the Laguna, the Passat? Ken Gibson went to a sneak preview in Spain last week to find out.
I want you to imagine a motoring equivalent to football's Champions League, where your team is drawn against Manchester United, Real Madrid and Barcelona. Well, that's the task facing Citroen's C5. It's just joined the new Super League of big family cars up against the Mondeo, the Laguna and the Passat. And that is a mighty tall order. And as you can see, the looks of the C5 are conservative with a capital C. I think even the assistance of Claudia Schiffer from Citroen's Zara adverts would be needed to get the heart pulsing with this car. But they're all about driving. So let's go and see what this car's like inside. Citroen have always been noted for their expertise in suspension. That's always given the cars a very cushioned ride. The C5 features Hydroactive 3. It sounds like a blockbuster movie, but it's a very smart electronic suspension system. The system basically varies the height of the car according to the speed and road surfaces, which in turn actually improves the fuel economy. Very handy. If the C5 doesn't quite match the Mondeo's magnificent handling capabilities, it's pretty impressive. And once you get it into sport mode, it can perform fairly lively as well. It sort of has a very comfortable ride. It glides along. It never feels hurried, and actually you have to keep looking down at the speedometer because you're making pretty rapid progress. This will be a very, very good long-distance touring machine or a repmobile for going up and down motorways. I have to say I'm impressed by the new 2.2 litre turbo diesel as well. Apart from on turnover and at low down speeds, you cannot tell it's a diesel. It's also surprisingly nippy. 0 to 60 comes up in just under 10 seconds. It'll do over 126 miles an hour if you were allowed. And it's got a lot of low down torque as well, so overtaking's excellent. Plus, of course, you've got 44.6 miles to the gallon, and that's combined, which is pretty impressive for a big car. I like the look of the cabin as well. Apart from being very spacious, the materials are pretty plush, has a quality feel to it. All of the instruments are very, very well laid out. Ergonomically, it's excellent. The C5 is also full of lots of clever, very user-friendly technical touches. Things like automatic headlights that come on when it gets dark or you go into a tunnel. And apart from the satellite navigation system, Citroen have developed a voice activation unit where you can put the CD on or use the telephone simply by voice commands. I think that's a really helpful gadget. The leather-clad 2.2 HDI we've tested, with all the extras and gadgets, will cost around £20,000. The same as the top-of-the-range 3-litre V6 C5. So, can the Citroen C5 win the Champions League of motoring? I don't think so, but it reminds me a lot of Leeds United. It's capable of giving everybody a game, because it's a surprisingly good all-rounder. And the good news for Citroen is, it doesn't have to win the championship. It just has to compete. And I think it will.
So the C5 needs to combine the comfort and refinement of a saloon car with the space and practicality of a people carrier. And it is an important launch for Citroen because it replaces both the XM and the Zara, so it's got to be designed to fulfill two functions. As a Rep's long-distance mile muncher, it needs to look the part and offer comfort and that sophistication and refinement, whilst at the weekends there's got to be plenty of room on board for the family, the kids and the dog.
Last week we showed you Honda's new pocket rocket, the Civic Type R. Now this is the sensible side of the business. The Accord may not be quite as sporty and fun, but as Richard's been finding out, it certainly has its uses.
I have just driven 650 miles. Sadly, not every car can be all about sitting in glamorous locations, looking beautiful with the promise of much high-speed fun. Many are just about this, ordinary roads and ordinary days and ordinary journeys. And this is one such car, the Honda Accord Type V. And I reckon a bit of a road test is in order here. I reckon about 650 miles should give me time to get to grips with it. The tag V-Type does sound very exciting and dynamic, which is a little bit misleading because that is patently not what this car's about. It's about this, munching up mile after mile of motorway and big A roads in comfort, safety and really just wafting along nicely. Some bigger cars approach the whole prospect of huge journeys by surrounding you with every luxury you can possibly need, couching you in comfortable ruched leather and ensuring you've got enough toys and gizmos to keep even the most frantically busy-minded of us occupied on a longer journey. Here though it's a very different approach and typically Honda, to be honest, in that bland is perhaps a bit harsh, undistinguished maybe is a bit harsh, but you get the feeling. Everything is quiet, laid back, does the job. Time and time again with this car, you find yourself coming up against the same problem. You pick at it and pick at it, and I've got enough time to sit in this thing right now and do that. And you'll come up with something that's, well, it's just a bit boring. That's the point. It's supposed to be boring. The handling of it, well, if anything, it is a bit woolly about the straight ahead, which is how it's going to spend most of its time heading down the motorway. It doesn't exactly feel pin sharp and ready to change direction too quickly, but that in itself is probably quite a good thing. On slightly twistier roads, it's willing enough, it's certainly able enough, it doesn't feel like it's going to have any nasty traits, shocks or surprises for you. But face it, this is not a car that's going to be taken out on a Sunday morning just for the fun of it. It is quite a sizable engine, but like the tag V-Type, which turns out to be a bit misleading and a bit of a disappointment, do not expect this thing to race away. Honda's fantastic VTEC engines and the new generation of iVTEC engines are very clever and very effective. I have just driven 650 miles. I feel fantastic. A cross expression seems to be the look for all of these MG-Z cars, and nowhere has it seen more effectively than in this angry-looking critter, the MG-ZS. Now, the 2.5-litre V6 engine is the one they expect to sell most of, 0 to 60 in about 8 seconds, and it'll be a version of this car that they enter in the British TOCA Touring Car Race Series. So this clearly is going to be their racy image builder. They promise as well that that will then inspire a seriously hot ultimate road-going version of this that people will be able to buy. That should be well worth a look. And then, just I think for a bit of fun, there's this. It was a bit of a surprise launch here at the show. An estate obviously like no other. At launch it's going to have a 2.5 litre V6, that's going to be later this year, but then next year there are going to be 2 V8 engine versions with 260 and 375 bhp respectively, and they'll be switching to rear wheel drive. I should imagine Labradors all over the UK are just dreading the whole idea. How's it going to feel in the back of that? Stuck to the window. The MG badge has adorned some pretty decent kit over the years, and some garbage. I have a feeling this is going to be good though. It's the MG ZR. It's the smallest in their new range of Z cars. It is obviously a hot hatch. It's going to have a hot engine, 1.8 litre VVC, though they will do more cooking versions with a 1.4 or 1.8 litre K-Series engine, or even a 2 litre turbo diesel. But it's more than just a look makeover. The changes are underneath as well. The chassis has been updated. The whole driving experience we're promised is going to be pretty special.
Well, that's it for this week's look at the 2001 Geneva International Motor Show. Highlights for you, Rich?
I think if I could have any car, it would have been the Aston Martin Vanquish, because it's gorgeous, but I'm going to go balmy, and if I really could have anything, I'm going to have the Land Rover, the Tomb Raider Land Rover.
With Lara Croft as an optional extra.
Yes, absolutely.
Of course.
It should be standard. What would you have?
Aston Martin, if money was no object, but far more in my pocket, and a car that I'm quite looking forward to driving. It's the Honda Civic Type R, and I never thought that I'd see the day, and I'd quite like to see my granddad behind the wheel of it as well, because that'd give him a thrill.
Interest, that, definitely. Don't worry if you think you've missed anything, because there's actually so much here, you're going to see more.
Yeah, over the next few weeks on Motor Week, we will bring you some more highlights from the show, things we haven't managed to pack into these programmes, so make sure you join us. Until next time, goodbye.